I believe you could unmic yourself and do that. But this shows you this past year, our annual year runs from April 1st till March 31st each year. And so we finished the year back at the end of March, and that's in column E, it's the yellow column. Every year we have to file a report with the federal government in order to hold on to our 501c3 status. And we've been very lucky for the last 4 years to have John Stafford do the 990 reporting for us. I highlighted the red line, which captures the fundraising done in the annual fund, and then the other fundraising that takes place at the conference, which also had a big boost last year. The ideas that sort of came forth about, I think, 2 years ago have really paid off for the work we do there as we moved on, at least for the moment, from silent auctions. And you know, our major income and our major expense have to do with the 2 conferences we run, and then we have some administrative experience with expenses which have to do with insurance and the fact that the registrar and the treasurer receive a stipend and some other expenses that happen inevitably each year. But the trend has been for us sort of closing the gap on covering the cost of the conference between the fees that we pay at the conference and then this fundraising that's on such a positive trajectory over the last 7 or 8 years. What happened up until 5 years ago was that we relied on our investment funds to help cover the costs of scholarships each year and the costs of bringing in new resource people. And it has seemed prudent for us to come to a position which we have reached in the last 2 years, where we cover our costs each year without having to rely on funds that were raised over the last 35 or 40 years. So this captures the income and the expense for both the summer conference and midwinter for the last 4 years, and any other expenses that sort of incorporated in there. And then, as you can see, there's very little. Column F would be the budget for this year. And we have some set expenses, and that again includes our insurance costs and so forth, that we know we'll have this year. And I think we probably have some decisions to make going forward after this taste of Northfield about, for instance, if we're going to do any other fundraising this year and so forth. I say that this has not come yet up in a board meeting recently, so I'm just throwing that out there myself. But last year was a good year for us, and being on this trajectory around the fundraising has been a real positive in terms of the long-term position of the conference. I think it's worth it for everybody at the conference to understand that the school has treated us very generously over the last 25 and 30 years. And that right now, when we're on campus, we're paying about 70% of what other guests of the school pay when they attend other functions, camps, and events in the summer. So the school's been very cautious about raising our costs. We have no reason to believe that this could go on indefinitely, held to that level. They have their own unusual pressures. And actually, boarding schools are one of the more vulnerable sectors in the educational world at this point, dealing with the impact of COVID. NMH held out to the last minute, trying to bring back its own kids in April before they realized that was just not going to go. But so I just wanted people to understand that we're very lucky to be so well taken care of, that we have an extraordinarily positive relationship with them. We also have a very generous history of being well taken care of by them financially and otherwise. And at the same time, we've been very eager to make sure that we have our own resources if we should ever get ourselves in a position where something different had to be done. Are there any questions that anybody wants to ask about any of this? There's clearly, obviously, there's a much more detailed version of this that the board looks at a couple of times a year, and which anybody else is welcome to see if they want to.
Hi, Ron. I have a question. This is Sarah. First of all, thank you. And I really appreciate you showing the multi-year view. That's actually really helpful to me. Do we have a sense at all from the school whether we're going to be paying them something for the canceled reservation or anything like that?
Well, they canceled the reservation. And Jim, should I just go ahead and finish this?
Sure. Sure.
Were you going to speak to this?
I can talk a little bit about relationship with the school, but you go ahead and say whatever you want and I'll fill in. You go for it.
Well, so we didn't have any obligation to them and they didn't have any obligation to us based on the contract we had with them. So there was nothing left to be done at that point. I think Jim will tell you about it, but he suggested to the board, and I think it was an extraordinarily smart thing to do for multiple reasons, that we actually, without any obligation to them, made a contribution. But let him tell you the details of that and the transaction that took place there, because I think it was a very smart way for us to stay in touch with them and be aligned with them in this time when they're having their own struggles.
I also just have a related question, whether there were any other expenses related to what we're doing now. So there was a contribution that Jim's going to talk about in a second, but I'm wondering, were there any other expenses that we needed to manage by doing this, gathering in this way?
Well, if Dana and Bill charge us for at the open market, we could be fundraising for the next 7 or 8 years. But
Bill's held up his credit card a couple of times, so I think we made some money.
So except for the $273 that it costs for me to be able to drive a golf cart in my own neighborhood for these 4 days, that's the only bill that I've received related to this event at this point. Any other questions?
Can I just say, it's Julie, did we make, looking at the fundraising, does that mean we made $7,000 on baskets, or is that right? Like how?
There's a couple of other $1,000s in there.
Right.
You know, the T-shirt income goes in there, even though there's expense that comes out of there. And I think the number's closer to 5. And we're, yeah, that was my takeaway from last year. And in the auctions, a good auction was in the 2 to 3 range. Any other questions today?
I have a question. Can you hear me? Am I unmuted?
No, I got you.
Okay. As far as fundraising, you mentioned about going forward for whether we will or will not do fundraising this coming year, since we didn't have our expenses. Who's going to come to that decision? How will that be?
Well, I think the board has been this has been the busiest year of board meetings we've ever had, because the board took over responsibility for planning this event that we're in the middle of. So I imagine if it doesn't get taken up in the next month or two, that it'll be a fall retreat item that could be taken up by both the board and the executive committee at that point in that way. And I'm sure there'll be the usual consultation with interested parties.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Anything else? Okay.
I have a question. This is
Yes.
Debbie. I'm not sure if this is the right time to say it, but because I'm not, but it has to do with virtual versus being actually being there, and whether going forward whether that's gonna, whether virtual is gonna always be included now in this in the new quote new normal, and whether there's been discussion about that on board and the executive committee or not.
Let me, so I think that's an interesting question. I mean, as somebody who works in education, of course, that's the topic that we can't get away from for 2 minutes, is whether or not we're in some new blended reality. But again, that would be an interesting question. And I think everybody who's here today, and we can make sure everybody who's not here today has a chance to contribute, as they always do, to the agenda that the leadership addresses when they get to the fall meeting. So, I think it'd be fine for people to both, tally that we heard that today, and for people to bring that up for future discussion.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not going to say any more questions because that seems to provoke one, but I'm about to move on to the next agenda item, which I'm also involved with. The last part of my treasurer's report today is a bittersweet pleasure, which I don't think goes together. The two key folks that the treasurer works with in our structure at Northfield are the registrar and the board president. So my 13-year tenure, following Grace Anna's 30-plus year handling of the job, has been graced by the opportunity to work with Peggy and now Tracy on the registrar side, and to serve with Andrew for 6 years, as allowed by the current bylaws, and now Jim wrapping up his 6th year as well. I've been a very lucky guy, and I've been given a few minutes to thank Jim for his remarkable service, and to also reassure myself that we're nowhere close to the end of it, even as he leaves this post among the many he's filled here. As I said last year in honoring Andrew, also using remote technology, I think I was driving home when somebody played my tape. Both he and Jim trained for the clergy, but ultimately decided to practice their faith in spirit and humanity without collars or pulpits, but by participating shoulder to shoulder in community, providing leadership as needed, bringing a level of enthusiasm, commitment, and maturity of purpose that's propelled forward whatever the enterprise. It's been revitalizing, and I'm saying this very personally, in the last 24 hours, just seeing all of you, to see and hear this weekend some of the current collection of talented folks that are at the center of our present Northfield, with all your vibrancy and commitment. 50 years ago, in the midst of the 60s cultural turbulence, George Blackman envisioned perhaps the most creative work of his lifetime as an Episcopal priest, a way to revive an 80-year-old girls' Bible study camp started by Dwight Moody in the previous century on the campus of Moody's Northfield School. 2 years later, when the ministers leading the camp began to bring their families to Northfield, an 11-year-old Jim Peters tagged along with a friend and opened his life to a pathway that's included 70-plus Northfield and Winnie conferences, meeting his life partner in George's kitchen a dozen years or so later, decades of Arundel visits with their Canadian family, and relentless opportunities for Jim to share his remarkable sense of humor depth of perception, eloquence, and hard work on behalf of the communities he's chosen. We here today are all the beneficiary of George's vision, and most recently, the beneficiary of Jim's perhaps unparalleled grasp of what Northfield is all about, and his remarkably gifted approach to leadership as service, humble, patient, and brilliant. Thank you, President Jim.
Thank you, Ron. On behalf of the entire conference, Jim, thank you.
Hey, Ron, can you stop sharing your screen so we can see everybody? Thank you.
Sorry.
Well, thank you, Ron. Gosh, now I have to talk. All right, Sen, thank you. Thank you,
So-
Madam Chairperson. And hi, everybody. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for, by the way, all the haircut offers I've been receiving in the last 36 to 45 hours. I very much appreciate it. So last June at the community meeting, I spoke to the plan that in my last year as president, the board would be reviewing our bylaws with proposed amendments to be presented to this annual meeting. We spent considerable time this year discussing many options and eventually voted to advance the slate of changes first published via the Google group 3.5 weeks ago, and then in the grapevine last week. Those postings explained the proposed revisions, which fit into 6 categories. First, the separation of the youth program coordinator from the board. Second, changing the term limit for the president. 3, providing the option to add up to 3 at-large board members for renewable 1-year terms. 4, for increasing the minimum number of required board meetings each year from 1 to 2. 5, amending the rule for a board meeting quorum. And finally, editing the paragraph describing the work of the conference nominating committee to reflect better that we meet all year and not just during the conference. Since publishing the proposal to the community, I have been in conversation with several members who reached out to me with reactions or questions about these proposed amendments. I'd like to especially thank Alan Lauderdale for his close reading and thoughtful communication. So friends, having provided notice as required by our existing bylaws, I would like now to make a motion, which if seconded, will initiate discussion of this proposal. So I move to enact the amendments to the 2013 Northfield bylaws as described in the 2020 President's Report document. Do I have a second to my motion?
Second.
Hearing a second, we are now in the discussion phase. So if anyone has any questions, comments, anything, this is the time before we have a vote. So this is, any questions on the floor?
I have one, Jim.
Yep.
The alteration to the president's term, I don't have my notes in front of me, sorry.
Okay, so I can explain that pretty quickly.
Okay.
The only officer that was hard term limited in the original, the 2013 bylaws was the president, 2 3-year terms, and then according to the current bylaws, never again. So the bylaw amendment proposal is to say it's that, plus you have to take a term off, 3 years off, but then someone could be eligible. So it was felt that there was no reason to have that be the only office that you could never hold again. So, but it can't be concurrent. It's not like FDR, you know, it won't be.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted it for everybody to hear, and
For sure.
thanks.
They'll undo their. Any other questions?
Having worked with several of Jim's predecessors on previous revisions, I'm glad that we're now at the stage of maturity that we can we change these when it's not a crisis going on and it's a dynamic and forward-looking thing for the health of the conference. And I think the said changes, reflect the realities of leadership the past few years. And I hope Jim's successors will also look at what changes need to be made at the end of their terms.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why is it important to not have the it was the first one about the children program?
The youth program coordinator. Okay, so it's really in some ways a question of the purpose of the board. Another way to look at it is the commitment you're asking someone to take on with the job. So we don't ask the each year's program chairs to be on the board. They have enough. And we decided that it was sort of inconsistent to ask not the program chairs, but the youth program chair to be on the board. And for many years, Ron served in both capacities. So he was on the board as the treasurer and the youth program coordinator. Going forward, I think it makes good institutional sense to separate the board functions and the board officers and responsibilities from the program side, whether it's for the kids or whether it's for the grown-ups. And that was the thinking behind that.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
I'd like to say this is such a civilized, respectful, and adult process that it's in the context of what else we're all living through. I'm so grateful to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just add something to that, to what you just said, Jim?
Sure.
And that is that there may be times from time to time, as we do things, that we may very well like to have the youth program coordinator or the youth program coordinator themselves would like to attend a board meeting, and they would always be welcome to do that. It's just this will not require the person to be there.
Ron, did you want to say something?
Well, the other thing, which isn't a part of the bylaws change, but it's fine for people to know, is the board also decided to make the youth program position a stipended position. And that's a first going forward. But it seemed to us like it was very valuable to have some continuity in that position and to have somebody who was available to think about it throughout the year. So there were several things done around that position, and the bylaws part is one of those.
Any other questions? Well, what I'd like to do is to express my intent to call the vote. Is there any objection to my calling the vote? If there's an objection, we just have to have a vote on whether we have the vote. But hearing no objection, I'd like to call a vote on the motion. And the motion is to enact amendments to the 2013 Northfield bylaws as described in the 2020 President's Report document. And just so you know, according to our bylaws, this vote requires a 2/3 majority of members present to pass. So, okay. There should be some Jeopardy music. Last, has everyone had a chance to vote? Anyone having difficulty? Okay, I guess we'll call the vote. Okay, wow. That's great. Thank you all, really. That's the end result of many hours of conversation in typical Northfield style as we try to make our processes work as well as we can and have our documents accurately reflect our practices. I'm grateful for the outcome. In fact, that's where I am right now. I'm filled with gratitude. Friends, I have a nomination to make, but before I do, I would like to take this time to make my last remarks as president to this community. As Ron was saying, 6 years ago, I had the honor of succeeding Andrew Mason, the first board president under our new structure with 1 league member instead of 3. I just want to say that I knew I had big shoes to fill. Andrew's contributions are too many to enumerate here. Let's just say that his commitment to the conference, his ability to engage effectively with Northfield Mount Hermon School, and mostly his thoughtful, warm, and engaging demeanor all made this conference immeasurably stronger during his service as president and before and since. In the last 6 years, I have tried to build on the foundation Andrew so effectively built. At the same time, I'd also like to say that having been driven by Andrew to countless planning meetings across New England and into Canada, that nothing gives one a sense of the preciousness of life, quite like sitting in the passenger seat while Andrew, in that deep, soothing voice of his, calmly explains to you that the local speed limits are more of a suggestion than an actual impediment. Now, I'm not sure he's here right now, and I suspect it because he's in traffic court. We'll just I digress. There are so many people who are in my heart today. I do want to say that Judy Blum and Kay Flanagan have taken the website and the grapevine to new levels of helpfulness. We on the board call on them all the time, usually at the last minute, and their answer always is, how can I help? I want to thank the board members I served with over the last 6 years. Peter Block, Betsy Taylor, Rob Young, Donna Moore, Lisa Schumerhorn, Wendy DeMarteau, Julie Snow, Betsy Hayes, as Troika members were and are all tireless advocates for our conference. Each had and has their own leadership style, most publicly exhibited in their 3rd year, and somehow, in the finest Northfield fashion, the transitions of leadership happen pretty seamlessly. And I want to pay special tribute to my fellow board members with whom I've had the privilege to serve these last 6 years. Our registrar, Tracy Briscoe, whose attention to detail and warmth of spirit has helped navigate our registration process into the modern age in deeply positive ways. She's one of the people who takes logistical challenges and just finds a way to make things work. Everyone always gets a room. Our secretary, Caroline Justin, with whom I served on the Troika a million years ago. No one can turn around a set of minutes faster. In fact, I think they named it minutes after her. Her passionate commitment to our annual fund appeal process helped transform our fundraising. And can I just say that Caroline was often in the car with me and Andrew. To Caroline, the only problem with Andrew was that he drove far too slowly. On more than one occasion, returning home from a weekend meeting with Caroline behind the wheel confirmed Einstein's theory of general relativity, as we would arrive home several hours earlier than we departed. Nancy Taylor, absolutely yes. Thank you, absolutely knows of what I speak. Yeah, it's mostly true. Treasurer, and until last year, Youth Program Coordinator Ron McLean, has spent more hours supporting our conference's smooth running financially, logistically, intellectually than the rest of us put together. It's a lot more than golf carts, my friends. His endless enthusiasm for this community keeps pushing us to keep our organization vibrant and positively self-examining. It has been a profound honor to have worked with these wonderful people and with so many, many more in the service of our beloved Northfield community. Jean and Liz and Chris were and are my constant companions in my journey with all of you. I want to say, because of the shared commitment of all of us, that our conference is continuing to flourish. How do I know? You could look at our fundraising, thanks to Caroline and to Lisa Schimmerhorn, who ushered in the basket era and helped take our fundraising to the next level. You could look at our evaluations year after year. Most of our conferees express incredibly strong positive reactions to the week. You could look at our attendance. Our attendance numbers over past recent years have been steady or rising. But after today's conference hour, when Kim and Sam quoted Dorothy Mason as describing trauma in terms of being deprived of being seen as our authentic selves, I think that's what we try to be all about, to discover, maybe to heal our authentic selves by intentionally hearing each other's stories. I know we will keep flourishing as long as we keep engaging deep human needs. All these things together tell me we are a community that is enthusiastic and engaged, and as Sam said, pumping up the hope. Do we have challenges ahead? You bet. Moving from one campus to the other was a big challenge. We figured that out. We are in challenging times now, no one can dispute it. But the attendance this weekend and the energy here is just, to me, another encouraging sign of the resilience of our community. And I have one last thing to say before I announce the board's nomination for my successor, and that is that relations between our conference and the new leadership at Northfield Mount Hermon School are also on a solid footing. After we received word that the school had to suspend our contract this spring, and in consultation with the board, I wrote Brian Hargrove, the school head, to express our support for the school and to underscore our long-standing connection. We included an undesignated gift of $5,000 to the school. He telephoned me, and his message was unequivocal. When it's safe for us to return, he and the school are ready and excited to welcome us back. So friends, we are in good shape today, and we are going to be in good shape for a long time yet. I'm certain of that because it is my honor and my pleasure to place in nomination today Wendy DeMarteau to serve as president of the Northfield League from 2020 to 2023. Now, I've known Wendy for more than a dozen years, beginning with our work together on the Vision Committee headed up by Ron Cook. When 3 years ago, the nominating committee could not identify a new Troika member before the June conference ended, it was Wendy who said yes a few weeks later. Wendy's leadership skills, her ability to communicate with kindness and clarity, and her strong and generous spirit will serve every one of us well. I could not be more delighted and appreciative that once again, when asked, Wendy has said yes. So friends, in my last official act as your board president and with genuine optimism for the continued flourishing of the conference we love so deeply, I move the nomination of Wendy DeMarteau for the position of Northfield League Board President for 2020 to 23. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
The nomination is on the floor. Are there other nominations from the floor? You can just unmute. Hearing none, I would like to call the vote. Is there any objection to my calling the vote? The vote is called.
Are you going to vote yes?
Yes.
You're unmuted, Greg, just thought I'd tell you.
She said.
You're unmuted, so we might know your vote. So.
Right? Just kind of know your vote.
Yeah, I know, Wendy. Yeah, she owes me money. What are you talking about?
A few more seconds. Going once. Okay, let's call the vote, Bill. Well, there we have it. Madam Chairperson and President-elect, I yield my time.
Thank you, Jim. Next item on the agenda, item number 5, we're at Thanksgivings. So I'd like to start, and then I will turn it over to Betsy once I'm done. So on behalf of the entire board, and I'm quite confident on behalf of the entire conference, I'd like to express our profound thanks and appreciation to our 2020 program chairs, so Lynette Tucker and Gail Ferris, as well as our workshop coordinators, Andy and Sarah. You know, they worked so hard since last June on our behalf, guiding and supporting the planning process. And then April came and we had to cancel. And as Jim reported in April, we're very fortunate and thrilled that Lynette and Gail and Andy have agreed to stay on in their roles for the next year to ensure that as much as possible of the program that they had envisioned that was supposed to take place this June can be brought forward to the 2021 conference. So it's a huge offer, very generous of them. And it certainly makes me feel more grounded and hopeful, you know, in next year's conference. And while Sarah could not commit at this moment to continuing in her role for next year, we're very grateful for all the work that she has done in the past year. And we're also very appreciative for anybody who either hosted a planning meeting, attended a planning meeting, or who volunteered to do workshops or fill roles that were supposed to take place this year. And, you know, stay tuned. 2021's coming up. Gail, we are leaving it up to Gail and Lynette, who have graciously accepted to carry forward for another year, that whatever they've done or planned that was supposed to take place this June, it's up to them how much of that, how little of that they want to take forward to next year. So totally up to them. We're just grateful that they're continuing in that position. So thank you all for that. And Betsy Hayes.
Is there a reason why I can't see anybody? I can't see anyone.
The trouble's on your end, Betsy, I think.
You're in slow motion, Betsy, too. We're not seeing you.
Okay,
it could be you have a slow connection, slow interconnect connection.
Yeah.
Well, I was seeing people for a while, and then all of a sudden, even in gallery view, I don't see anyone at all, except myself.
But
yeah.
we do hear you.
We can hear you.
We hear you. I see you, but you keep freezing, which means it's your connection, but we can't hear you.
Okay, is there anything else I can try?
You can try going out and coming back in, but say we can hear you right now if you want to.
All right, you can hear me, it's all right. So I am very glad that I get the honor of thanking Wendy for all of the work she's done for 3 years as member of the Troika. When I was asked to serve, a huge part of my saying yes was knowing I'd be working with Wendy. She's absolutely reliable. If she says she'll do something, you know it will be done and can take it completely off your own plate. She's smart and quick and direct, no beating around the bush or wondering what does she really think. And she's wickedly funny. So no matter what the discussion concerned, there was always some laughter that always lightened the load. It felt like Julie and Wendy and I were a well-oiled machine this year, and then COVID hit. While we continued working together as we planned our virtual conference, it's particularly difficult not to be able to say thank you in person. We can't even give you our gift, but I'm going to hold it up for everyone to see. And once you've made your choice, we'll take care of getting it to you. I'm going to hold it up now. Let's hopefully that's going to work. Can everyone read that?
We can't, you're in freeze frame right now.
There you go.
Oh,
Now can you read it?
Yes.
yes,
And Wendy, you can read it, right?
I
That
can.
says, petriflexion of your choice
Okay.
goes here.
For my collection. Thank you.
Yes. So I'm glad we're not saying goodbye, and that we'll be continuing to work together with Wendy in her new capacity. We are deeply grateful for all that you've done these last 3 years. You've made it seem effortless. So thanks. And I can see I'm frozen.
Thanks, Betsy. That's, you know, this is my third and final year, and it's been a wonderful experience for me. And it's been a wonderful experience primarily, I mean, yes, I love the conference, want to do what I have to, blah, blah, blah. But really, it's been a wonderful experience because of the people I got to work so closely with. To the directors on the board, so Jim, Ron, Caroline, Tracy, and Julie and Betsy. I mean, and we've had, you know, I just loved how we all worked so cohesively together, had very open and honest dialogues. I know that we all have a shared passion for the conference. And I just loved the honesty and openness. I loved it when, particularly Julie or Betsy, when you called me out on something, because I can be a little too direct sometimes. And I need that, so please continue to do that. And it has been a wonderful experience. And, you know, part of why I've agreed to take the position as president, the primary reason for that, again, is because of the people that I'm going to get to work with. So thank you. And it's been a real pleasure this last year in particular, but also my other 2 years on the Troika, working with Donna Moore and Lisa Schermerhorn. So it's been a great experience all round, and I would certainly recommend it for everybody. And I think, you know, Greg, you're going to have a wonderful time working so closely with Betsy and Julie. I'm envious. Thank you. I think that concludes item number 5, unless anybody else has anything to add to the thanks.
Yeah, I have something I'd like to offer.
Please go ahead, Kathy.
This is a goodbye gift for you, Wendy, and for Jim, for your services. And we know you have open hearts and open minds, and you want to feel free and safe in the world. So you're each going to get a group art face mask made from the group art fabric. Okay?
Beautiful.
Made these, and I'm going to send it to you. So we're making these. So you can think of the Northfield community when you're out and about and feeling like you're protecting others. We know what this is about with the mask. So this is a gift for you guys coming soon.
And you can keep your mouths open as well as your hearts and minds this way.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm rarely speechless.
I just hope I don't have to wear it next June, that we can all be together in person. And I hope that I could put in a frame with my other perfections, with my little collection, and hang it there.
Right. Yeah.
After I finished using it the next several months, because I know I'm going to have to. So thank you very much.
Okay, for Wendy. And Jim, you get one too.
Amen. Thank you. Wow. I will wear it with pride.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is other business, and we do not have any items to discuss for any other business. Does anybody want to bring anything up right now to discuss as other business? If you do, please unmute yourself.
I do. Go ahead, Kara.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Kara.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I had an idea. I started as a joke, but I had an idea for something we could add to like our merch that we sell on the first day of Northfield. But I thought about the idea of us having like a Northfield calendar so that you can see pictures from Northfield on your calendar. And I thought, I mean, this part might be too much, but I just thought it'd be really funny if instead of it starting in January and going to December, it could start from like Northfield to Northfield. I mean, the months are the same, but like, I don't know. I just thought that that'd be a cute idea because like I would buy that. Like, I don't know. It was just an idea.
Nice.
It's a wonderful idea, and perhaps that
Ask
might be.
Caroline.
Thank you, Kara. Well, I've made a note of that, and sort of will take that forward, and who knows, maybe that could become a fundraising opportunity. Thank you. Carol, you had
Yes.
something to say?
Just about the retreat. If we find out about when the retreat's happening, and then that, would we have midwinter? How are we going to try to plan and all that? I'm sure you guys have talked about it, just trying to think ahead because I have to put time off when I take time off now so far ahead of time. So just just whatever you've got, think going.
So up to this point, as a board, we have not even talked about midwinter.
Okay.
We've been meeting every week, but to plan this Taste of Northfield. We have talked briefly, just mentioned that we acknowledge that we have to have a retreat and that we're going to have to plan those dates. Our feeling at this point, we don't have a crystal ball, so we don't know. Our feeling at this point is it's likely going to have to be virtual, but we have not planned a date yet, and that's something that that we know we have to do, and we will be doing that shortly. And as for midwinter, again, we haven't talked about that. We will start talking about that.
Yeah.
I would love to say yes, we can all get together in January, but none of us knows whether or not that's going to be possible or likely.
I just didn't know when we had to give them money and all that. So, thanks.
Are there any other questions?
Greg here, I have, I want to express my gratitude for people's trust in me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Greg, for taking on the role. We appreciate that. Okay, so if there's nothing else, in closing, I'd just like to, before I put the motion to adjourn the meeting, I'd just like to, anybody who does celebrate Father's Day or any variation of this day, I'd like to wish you a happy day. To our Canadian folks, I'd like to wish you a happy Aboriginals Day, which is today. And with that, I'd like to put forward a motion to adjourn the meeting. Everybody's muted.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Greg. Anybody against that? I don't think we'll do a vote. If anybody is against adjourning the meeting, please speak up right now. Unmute yourself. All right, so it's so moved. This concludes the 2020 annual meeting. It is adjourned. Thank you.
How long can we hang
Bye,
around?
love you.
Can we hang for a little bit to see people like we did last time?
Sure, that's up to Bill. I think Bill is hosting this meeting.
I think I may have mentioned a little while ago that if you can just hold this up, these minutes cost. So I'm just telling you.
Oh.
Does that mean that by the end of this weekend, you'll actually be someplace with the ocean right behind you?
Yeah, how do you get those scenes behind you?
It's a virtual background.
I know, I still haven't figured out how to put them up yet.
But how does Carol get her hands all
Really? Hey, I was able to get a private flight. I'm where you have.
I see.
To me.
Oh, and now Kathy and Peter are in the grass.
Oh, they are in the grass.
Coming
not
in
the
and out.
weeds. As long as it's not the weeds.
We're not on
And the
campus.
grass explains a lot, actually.
We're not on campus. We
I
don't
think
have to follow
I'm
those rules.
I think I'm winning because I'm at Northfield. So
You are at Northfield.
Wow,
You are?
Oh,
You
yeah.
are? Oh, there you are. Yes.
Oh, there you go. Love it.
You are. You've got the best.
The green screen. How do you get the green screen? Oh, they're technical things.
What was it that you used? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Bell, Bella looks.
What's
Bell.
the
Oh, okay.
Bill, you were yakking there for a while.
Yeah, it was seriously yakking.
Did somebody?
A green screen is literally a screen that is green that you put behind you, and that makes for perfect uninterrupted projection. So
So
that's
you
what they
go
have.
into, is that a? Like
No,
a
you have
router?
to buy one and have something green. And that's why if you ever see anybody with just a head, that usually means they're wearing a green shirt.
you
Is
can
that why
also
Peter
do
and Kathy are disappearing? Oh, now they're in the Northern Lights.
They're in the Northern Lights, yeah.
you can also do it without a green screen. Like
You
it
can.
just sometimes it's more glitchy. But like I'm not using a green screen.
What this photo
What
is
are you using? Just a
So
black wall?
no, it's just like at the bottom of your screen on the left where it says stop video, there's an arrow, and when you click it, you can hit choose virtual background, and then you can add one and like put a picture, and it just puts the picture behind you.
Is this one of
Upload a
mine,
picture.
Kara?
It might be. I don't know. I have no clue
Because I
where
want
I
to
got
talk
this
to you.
picture from.
You and I should talk about the calendar idea because I certainly have enough pictures to choose from. It's not work on this.
Is Caroline
Yeah.
on this call still?
Yes.
Caroline, Justin? Remember the calendar from 80 million years ago?
Yep.
Did do one, didn't I?
Just-
Was it?
we did.
We did a poster.
We did a poster calendar because the other idea was, but hopefully we can resurrect it again.
I
Sounds like
would
a great
100% buy
idea.
the Northfield calendar.
Be lovely, and it can have all the dates of like midwinter and board meetings and everything else on it. It sounds like a wonderful idea.
Anybody
think it
seen
might-
Calendar Girls? Maybe we can do calendar families.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe.
With clothes.
Board members.
With clothes.
They did in Britain. We're gonna need bigger muffins.
It might be hard to put like meeting dates on there because don't those get decided
Yeah.
very like.
Yeah, you have to have it printed first, but
But we could put things like important Northfield things that
yeah,
other things or like I don't
Birthdays.
know, birthdays,
Play around.
anniversaries, stuff like that.
play around with it.
Or historical things from Northfield,
Sure.
commemorating this or this. First time we did this. Whatever.
Oh my God. Who brought who?
North,
Ooh, yeah, we could have quite a well, we could do a whole sitcom called
wait.
Northfield wedding anniversaries.
We're having another first right now. It's the first annual meeting that nobody wanted to leave.
Ah, that's
At
right.
Northfield, people are running to get their happy hour drinks.
It's happy hour. It's happy hour.
Oh,
It
there we go.
I wouldn't have thought less of you, Bill.
It's
True. Oh my God.
Nice to see all your faces.
yes. I'm not gonna.
Missing the conferences here, so this is like a godsend, just
Yes.
feeling part of you all. Really.
Yeah.
So we have 2 more evenings. Look forward to those evenings. I will be working during the day, but
All right, yeah, come. Let's-
Tonight is the storyteller with Jonathan and Steve.
yep.
So
And that's at 7, right?
That's
7 you're
7.
done.
That's 7. Yep.
That's tonight, right?
That's 7.
Good night.
Yeah, if I don't
Me
get
too.
off now, I'm gonna be not there later.
Well, you better go or you won't be there.
Bye, Deborah.
I need to get,
See you,
I need to
Deborah.
get
Soon,
something in
Deborah.
me. What?
Print out
Where's
your
Lynette?
grid.
Lynette?
All right, I'm leaving. I'll see everyone tonight.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah.
See you, Wendy.
Bye.
See you, Wendy.
all again. Bye.
Thanks.
I saw Lynette before, but she's gone.